everyone. Welcome. We wanted to give a warm welcome to all of our alumni of the University of Michigan. For many of our alumni joining us that regularly attend these webinars, I'm sure you're expecting to see our usual host, Louise Jackson. I wanted to let you know that Louise has accepted a new role at the university as the director of the University Career Center. While we're sad to see Louise go, we're excited for her to take on this new role and support students across the university in their career growth and exploration. I am Brooklyn Posler. I am the Associate Director of the Career Program, and I'm usually working behind the scenes on these webinars to share related resources from the Alumni Association and beyond. I'm here today with my colleague, Haley Briggs, our Education Program Manager, and we'll be doing our best to fill Louise's shoes in these webinars. Haley, do you want to go ahead and introduce our speaker?
Yes, thanks for the introduction, Brooke. I am happy to be here today with you all, and we are very excited and very grateful to have Hallie Crawford with us as we delve into our topic, imposter syndrome at work and in the job search. So before we kick off the conversation, I would like to review just a few housekeeping items. So this is an interactive webinar that is being recorded. The recording will be shared in a follow-up email. Also, please submit questions through the Q&A feature in your toolbar. We'll do our very best to get to your questions, but given the significant number of registrations, it's possible we may not get to all. So without further ado, I would like to share a little bit about Hallie Crawford. Hallie has been a certified career coach, speaker, author, and national career expert since 2002. Her company, Create Your Career Path, is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. She is regularly featured in the media, in Forbes, CNN, Money Magazine, Wall Street Journal, to name a few, and has undergraduate and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois. With over 2,000 success stories, her team of coaches and resume writers helps professionals find jobs that make them want to jump out of bed in the morning to go to work. With that, I will turn it over to Hallie.
Thank you so much, Haley. I really appreciate it. And I'm so thrilled to be here with you all day today to talk about this. Really, it's kind of a hot topic that we've noticed with our clients, this overcoming the imposter syndrome. So the advice we're going to be giving you today will be relevant for your professional life. I would argue with your personal life as well as your job search too. And our goal here, which is why I created this as our title slide, is learning how to overcome it. It's not something that is necessarily going to go away forever. We find with people that it can kind of ebb and flow in terms of what's going on in their career and in their life. But our goal here today is to learn how to overcome the imposter syndrome. And we've seen kind of an uptick in people wanting to talk about this topic, wanting help and assistance with this. And I feel like a lot of that has come from, people changing jobs like during and post-COVID, people getting laid off, like just so many different things happening with the economy and the workforce in the past several years. This imposter syndrome has gone up a little bit more. So I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about it. I'm going to be looking back and forth just a little bit because I've got split screens here, which I'm sure most of us do. So that's what's going on there. And as Haley said, I'm a certified career coach. I've been coaching and training for just over 25 years now. I turned 50 this year, so I'm over that hump, if you will, for lack of a better way to say it. And our coaches, we love helping people figure out their career path and be successful in that career path. And a lot of our clients will talk with us about different things related to not just changing careers and, dealing with a job search, but they'll talk with us as well about like being a new manager and how to overcome the imposter syndrome there, how to work with their employees if they have imposter syndrome. So the advice we're going to give you all today is advice that we give to all of our clients. And we are going to have time to answer questions at the end for your specific situation, et cetera, et cetera. Here's our agenda for today. So as we start to dive in, I just wanted to show you all kind of where we're going. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk first about what is imposter syndrome, like what does this mean, and kind of the definition, if you will, that we use with our clients. We're going to talk next about the impact. And what we find is that people have there's an internal impact, if you will, of imposter syndrome, as well as an external impact. And what I mean by that is there are certain things that go on for us when we have imposter syndrome, negative thinking, lack of confidence, all of these different types of things that can happen. And the result is that we don't do certain things in our, workplace that we should, like promote ourselves effectively, ask for a raise or a promotion. And we're going to talk about those different kind of side effects, if you will. We'll obviously be giving you along the way different tools to manage the imposter syndrome. And we are going to try to give you as much as possible specific action steps that you can take. And as we go through our slides here, I guess one of the things I wanted to say for you is I want you to think about from the get-go, like what your situation is with imposter syndrome, and we'll give you some things to kind of noodle on as we go. But you can pick and choose the action steps that make the most sense for your specific situation. Okay. We will have time for Q&A at the end, as we've mentioned already. And if anyone would like a copy of our slides, we'd be happy to share that with you. So as a reminder, you will get the recording from today. But if you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint slides as well, you would just need to email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com, and we'd be happy to share those with you. So let's dive in. How do we define the imposter syndrome, and what does this mean? There's several things that I wanted to share with you about this, because it kind of can be an esoteric kind of concept and like a slippery slope in some ways for people. So if you look at this first slide here, basically, if you look it up on, Wikipedia or in the dictionary or whatever, imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon, so to speak, where people have a harder time, or they're unable to really internalize and take ownership of their accomplishments, their strengths, and what they do well in their professional lives. Okay. In some cases, and this is not everybody, but in some cases, if you look at the second bullet point here, people are convinced to a certain extent that they're frauds or don't deserve the success that they have achieved. And in some other cases, people will assume that, the success that they've achieved in their career path, that it was just a lucky break, or, they just got lucky, or their manager really liked them, and so they promoted them, versus it was because of their strengths and skills, versus, just feeling like, oh, I just got lucky in that instance. And I want to say, as part of this, before we go to the next slide, that I've actually experienced this when I was early on in my career, and I still experience it within my career path. It kind of depends on the situation and what's going on with my business. But early in my career, as a quick example, I got a job and I was like, I think they hired me thinking I'm better at certain things than I actually am. And my boss was very supportive of me. She really believed in me. But honestly, I didn't believe in myself. And it caused me a lot of stress at that time in that particular job. And as my career has progressed over time, even though our business is incredibly successful, we love what we do, we help clients all the time, it's fantastic, there are times when I feel like I have a sense of the imposter syndrome. Like, do I really know what I'm doing? Sometimes, even though I'm 50, I feel like I'm 25. And do I really know what I'm talking about? And sometimes people have to tell me and be like, look, Hallie, the things that you say and do, that not everybody knows that stuff. So a lot of times, and this is one of the things I wanted to say before we go to the next slide, when we are naturally just really good at something, this is where imposter syndrome can creep in sometimes, because we just assume that, well, doesn't everybody else know this stuff? It just seems like common sense to me. So just notice that for yourself. If there are strengths that you have, or things that you notice that you're just come so naturally to you, and you tend to assume that everyone else is good at those, that's one of the kind of clues to possible imposter syndrome there. And what we have to do, using the tools that we're going to be talking about today, is start to step outside of ourselves and be a little bit more objective versus emotional about our career progression, to say, okay, look, these are success points and I need to pay attention to those. Let's take a look at this next slide. And I wanted to share just this quick statistic so that you know that you're not alone. I think one of the really important things when we're talking about things like this, imposter syndrome and otherwise, that you're not by yourself in this. There are a lot of people out there that have this sense of imposter syndrome. And statistics show that 2 out of 5, even really successful people, consider themselves frauds in some way, shape, or form. So it's not just about the people that aren't as good at their jobs, or, maybe haven't been as successful. This is across the board. And regardless of, your management or level within your organization, people experience this all the time in some way, shape, or form. And 70% of all people feel like imposters at one time or another. And that's a really key point here on this slide before we go to the next one, is I want you to start to think about or realize that this imposter syndrome, it can come and go throughout the course of your career. It can come up, understandably, a little bit more when you start a new job, when you get a promotion and have more responsibility. It can also come up when you're talking with a specific client, maybe that you work with, though, that intimidates you a little bit more, or if you're working on a specific type of project. So one of the things to start to notice for yourselves, and in some cases, your teammates and your coworkers and your employees, if that's relevant for you, is to start to notice if some of your imposter syndrome is situational versus it's all the time. And that can help you better understand like how you can manage it, because A, you can prepare yourself for those situations in advance. B, when you're more objective about it like that, and you know, okay, this is when this tends to happen, you're more able to kind of step outside of yourself and kind of manage it more effectively too. So I want you to think about this kind of idea of situational imposter syndrome as well, because it can come and go throughout the course of your career. The other thing that we want to just share, why we feel so many people are experiencing this sense of imposter syndrome, is I do think that in some ways, COVID and post-COVID and this working from home thing, hybrid model, and then having to go back into the office in some cases, did exacerbate this, because a lot of us didn't feel fully equipped for these types of challenges. Some people do really well working from home, while others don't do well. It's just not in their DNA or personality type. So just a lot of things, like we said earlier, may have led to or exacerbated your sense of imposter syndrome. And again, this is part of what we want to think about is like, what are the scenarios and situations that bring this up for you a little bit more than others? Because maybe there are changes that you can make in the way you approach those situations and get support or help with those different situations. So we just want you to think about that as well, because some of it absolutely is internal. It comes from within, lack of confidence or whatever. But a lot of the time, something happened to us along the way that kind of impacted us to cause this. So you want to think about those things, okay? And we're not going to talk about this slide too much because I feel like I kind of already touched on it, but just please know with this virtual work, if any one of you are still in that situation in any way, shape, or form, it can be really easy for us to have this sense of imposter syndrome because it's easier to feel burned out. And then sometimes like we're performing not as optimally as we could. We were thrown into, these new processes during the course of COVID, and we may have gotten the hang of it or not. We've had clients who are in the hybrid model, and it took them a while to figure out, like, how do I shift from the in-person, the week that I'm in person, and then the 2 weeks I'm remote, and, just sorting all of this out. And obviously when we're working from home and we've got like a different schedule, that can throw us off too. We have a little bit less structure. The other thing I wanted to point out here too, and I talked about this a moment ago, that this was just this great quote from Inc. magazine. It was several years ago, but this was a guy who owned a very successful health food store out in California. And this was a quote directly from him about imposter syndrome. And I just thought this was incredibly helpful so that we realize and don't make the assumption that just because someone is in a leadership position, trying to say too many words at once, in a leadership position or really successful, that doesn't mean that they don't suffer from this. This person said, and these are the kind of clues for you to notice if you say any of these things out loud or to yourself, clues to imposter syndrome here. If you regularly say to yourself or to other people that you don't feel like you deserve the success that you've had, if you regularly say or give too much credit maybe to your team, or always giving credit to your team and the people that you've worked with versus any credit to yourself, that's a clue of imposter syndrome. And if you're ever saying, well, we just got kind of lucky, for example, because, it was a really easy project for us, this particular person said location or the staff. Now, this doesn't mean that we're talking about, be really arrogant all the time and take credit for yourself all the time. Absolutely not. But it's finding a balance of those two things where you're not always giving credit away and never giving credit for yourself and always saying you don't deserve it, etc. Those are really big clues to possible imposter syndrome. What we wanted to share with you too is to let you know that what we find with our clients, and I think this is true in a lot of ways, when people are not achieving their career goals, when they're not as in a good a place as they would like to be professionally, 9 times out of 10, when it comes down to it, our clients will tell us that they are their biggest obstacle to their success. And I just wanted to point this out to help everyone understand how big of an impact this can have. I know that, normally, if we're not having the career success that we would like to have, sometimes we'll say, well, I wasn't afforded the opportunity, or some people will say, well, I couldn't afford to get this certification or whatever. Of course, there are going to be external influences here. But the majority of the time when people are asked, why am I not achieving my career goals? The imposter syndrome is a big one, because most people will say, when it comes down to it, it came down to me and I either didn't take action or I didn't speak up for myself as much as I should have or in the right way. So this is why this is such a big deal. And we've got to pay attention to the impact here, because it can influence so many different elements of your professional life. So we'd love to go ahead and do this first poll here if we could, and go ahead and launch that and give everybody a minute to participate in that. What we said earlier relates to this specific poll, that we are not expecting everyone on the call today, and hopefully not, to be saying, I feel like an imposter 100% of the time. We're hoping the numbers are lower. But please know that regardless of the percentage, the tools we're going to give you today obviously will help you with that, to be more, proactive and objective about it. But again, just keeping in mind that this can ebb and flow a little bit. And one of the action items that I think is incredibly helpful for people is to even just keep a journal for like the next 5 to 7, the next week, business working week, and just leave it on your desk of like, how often do you feel like an imposter? What are the things that you're saying to yourself, like those negative inner thoughts, so that you can start to talk back to them and manage them? And are there themes and situations when you're starting to notice that the imposter syndrome is coming out more for you or not? Because the more we can identify these themes and kind of the ebb and flow of things, you can start to address those head on by preparing for those times, by adjusting or rearranging like the priority of your schedule, working on more difficult things, for example, earlier in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll be quiet here so you all can go ahead and vote. Sorry, I get excited and I talk a lot. Wonderful. Okay, thanks for sharing these, and thanks everyone for participating. So if you take a look at our poll results, we've got 25% of the time is the second, 50% of the time is the largest one. And so that makes sense. So think about, when are the times that you have this and when are the times that you don't? And it could be that it's certain days of the week. It could be that when you're talking with a certain person or meeting with a certain person. The situational stuff can be about people. It can be about tasks. It could be about things. It could be about your schedule. And then we've got 35% are saying 25% of the time and 18%, 75% of the time. Thank you so much for that. Part of why we want to share this and show you is to, again, help you realize that you're not alone. And even if we can get the percentage down a little bit, please know that when we're talking about these, and we'll go to the next slide here, and I'd like to do the next poll in a couple of minutes here if we could. So we'll hold on off on that for just a second. please know that even if you can get your percentage points down a little bit, that is progress. The goal here is not necessarily to put so much pressure on things for yourself that you're saying, I never have imposter syndrome. I don't know if that's realistic. We've got to be realistic about these things and realize that the goal is to kind of reduce it as much as possible. Because I'll say this on the flip side, not having a sense of imposter syndrome, but actually like caring about your job and wanting to do well, those types of things. And even if a little bit of us is perfectionistic, and that's part of why we suffer from this, there's an element of those things that actually are a good thing because they keep us motivated to do our jobs well, to be detail oriented and to pay attention to stuff. Okay. So the goal here is to not have the imposter syndrome have a negative impact on us and prevent us from achieving our goals. But whatever those strengths are that you have that sometimes may bleed into the imposter syndrome, we want to hold on to those. So let's talk about the internal impact first. And this is what I want you to be thinking about is it's a great idea, like we said, to as part of your journaling and just to be noticing and thinking about how you feel during the course of your week. And when this imposter syndrome kind of rears its head, so to speak, so that you realize, okay, what's going on and when this typically happens. But the second thing we want you to think about there is how it makes you feel. Does it make you feel less confident? Does it make you start to not give yourself credit for certain things when you're talking in certain meetings? We want to start to notice what happens as a result of this. But the other thing too, is we want you to think about what negative self-talk is going on for you that is impacting your confidence as a result too. And we find actually that it's helpful to write out, and we actually in our coaching, we call them gremlins, the negative self-talk, like the negative things that we say to ourselves, we call those gremlins because there's a great book called Taming Your Gremlin. And I'll put that when we're doing the Q&A, I'll put that in the chat later so you can see it. Those are our negative inner voices. And one of the things we can start to do as an action step is to start noticing when those negative inner voices are talking and what they're saying to us. Are they always saying that you don't know what you're doing? Or are they saying like you're in over your head or you can't accomplish this task or whatever? Because if we can start to be more objective about what those things are saying to us, we can start to write and think about affirmations that will help push them aside. We can start to hear the voice in our head and say, okay, I'm not dealing with that right now. And literally just push it aside and focus on something else that makes you feel confident and good. So managing this negative self-talk really proactively in different ways can actually help you deal with the imposter syndrome. So talking back to it, we've had some clients write down what those negative things are, and some people will rip it up and throw it into the trash. Other people will say, I'm not listening to you, and go focus on something else that makes them feel really good. Some people have what they will call like a brag book, which they've either printed out or have an email folder in their email, which is their kudos and stuff from their clients or their boss, et cetera. And they'll keep it all in one place and they'll read through those things. So being more proactive about managing that negative self-talk is one of the tools that we really want you to work on and adopt, because we have found that when you just start to notice that negative self-talk is happening, you start to be more empowered to push it aside, and it helps kind of shut it down a little bit. So let's launch our next poll here if we could. And we're curious out there how many people, and thanks for waiting on the poll. I always have a lot to say right before. How many people feel like a fake? How many people tend to attribute their success to luck? How many people just kind of tamp down their success and say, well, wasn't that big of a deal. Oh, it was easy. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Whatever it is. And we realize, please, that you may have all of these. Pick the one that you feel is biggest for you in your situation. And please know too, that there could be other things that come out of your kind of self-reflection and your journaling to think about, okay, how do I feel? And, what happens, or what are the feelings and emotions that go on? Is it that I get frustrated? Is it that I feel less confident? Is it that I kind of want to hide out in my office and not, participate in meetings, whatever it is. So we'll give you a moment to complete those. And I feel like, honestly, I have said all of these to myself over the course of my 25 years as a coach at one point or the other. All right, good. Thanks for sharing these and thanks for participating. I hope we gave you all enough time. Discounting success. So this is really interesting. If you take a look at these results, the majority of people here today, at least, are saying discounting success. The second is feeling like a fake, and the third is attributing to success to luck. So I'd like you all to think about, really for all of these, but the discounting success and feeling like a fake, since those are the two higher ones. Think about, like, how do you do this? Like, is it that you're not speaking up about yourself in meetings? Is it then that when someone, for example, gives you kudos, you kind of brush it off and not really absorb it or, let it in? It's helpful to go a little bit deeper into each of these, whichever one applies to you the most, and start to notice those patterns and trends, like we said, but notice exactly like what's going on in your head for you. Not just that is causing this, but what are the normal things that are kind of the external impact, what's happening as a result? Because if we move to that on this next slide, here are some of the things that we find with our clients that happens as a result of the imposter syndrome. And of course, there are more. And please feel free to put in the chat if you have any others that you have experienced, because we'd love to hear about them. We hear about these from our clients, again, so that you can kind of be on the lookout for them. And I see in the chat that someone was saying I was looking for all of the above option. Totally get it with the survey. We're forcing you to pick one, but I get if it's all of the above. So some of the things, if you look at this slide on the left-hand side, some of our clients will say, well, I haven't applied for new jobs because every time I look at them, I feel like I don't have all of the qualifications. And so I just don't go for it because I'm freaked out or don't feel like I'm, qualified enough. We had a client or a prospective client once who came to us, and literally she had not asked for a promotion in 10 years. This is a really extreme example, but I was just floored. And she hadn't gotten one and not gotten a raise as a result. And she realized, when she called us, she's like, look, I haven't done this and I don't know why and whatever. But part of it was because of the imposter syndrome. So we don't promote ourselves enough, whether it's formally in, our evaluations, our annual reviews, or asking for that new job or the promotion or whatever it is. We've got to pay attention to these things. This is one of the results. Another one is that we will understate our experience or skill set in service of being humble and not seeming like we're being arrogant. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, but one of the things we want to kind of point out for you is that you can be confident and not be arrogant at the same time. There is a way to balance things simply by, when someone says or gives you kudos, saying, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I was really proud of that, because I felt like I did well there. In meetings, it's okay to say, like, my team did a great job and I have to give them kudos. I felt like I was able to leverage my strength of ABC and was able to, establish those relationships quickly. So I was thrilled about that. And I give a lot of credit to my team as well for these specific things too. So there are ways to do both. And you want to make sure that, whether it's with your boss or with your coworkers, that you're absorbing kudos when they give them to you and saying thank you versus pushing it aside, and that you are speaking up about the things that you've accomplished. And you can even speak up about past experience. Well, this is one of the things that I've done really well in the past, with previous positions. So I'd love to jump in this way if that's possible. A third, external impact, I've got allergies going on. A third external impact that we have heard from our clients, and this was not something that had occurred to me early on, was that some people will over prepare for tasks and they spend too much time. They let their perfectionist gremlin take over the show, and they'll over prepare for things and wear themselves out. and spend too much time on something when they really didn't need to. It was good enough in the first place. And all of these, if you think about them, they result in higher stress, lack of satisfaction in our job, lack of more money, all the different things that can happen. So we'd like you to write down, and we'd love for you to share this in the task as well, because people can see these, and then we might pull a few out when we talk about or do the Q&A as well. But what's the biggest negative impact for you? Like, what are you realizing as we're asking you to think about these things? What are like the two biggest negative impacts? Is it that you haven't progressed as far as you'd like in your career, or basically that you feel like you're always undercutting yourself and not giving yourself kudos, and focusing on or talking about your strengths and always giving everybody else credit? And as a result, you don't feel like you're building your brand within your organization, or that your boss sees you enough as an asset, for example, as you would like them to. So think about these different things. These are all things that obviously we coach people on. If anyone would like some additional advice and to learn about our services, happy to talk with you about it. Use the email here. One of the things that I did want to say, though, is please write down this email if you have questions that come up later for you, because I would be more than happy to answer. And if there are questions that we don't get to in the Q&A today, I'd be happy to answer those as well. So please feel free to reach out about many different things. Happy to talk. Let's talk a little bit more specifically next about tools to manage the imposter syndrome. So hopefully I've given you some action steps along the way: journaling, paying more attention to, giving yourself credit, not just your team all the time. But let's talk about some other things that can help you improve your confidence, and also as a result, manage the imposter syndrome as part of it. So I just wanted to give you a really quick example of a client, Beth, that we worked with a long time ago. She worked at a Fortune 500 company, and she was actually pretty high up, senior level in their marketing department there. And at the time when she came to us, she was obviously already really successful, but she's like, I want to get to the next level in my career, and I'm just not doing it, and I don't know why. For Beth, she actually, in her situation, she didn't have a college degree. And that was something that always kind of stuck with her, that she felt like her bosses always just liked her, and so they promoted her, that she kind of got lucky with her career path. She was giving credit everywhere else except for her, talent, strengths, accomplishments, etc. And some of the things that we worked on with her, just using her as one example, are listed on this slide. So let's go through these for a second. So in addition to the things we've talked about in order to create that greater self-awareness for yourself, one of the things that we will have people do that can actually be incredibly helpful is to interview other people, like family, friends, former coworkers, even some of your current coworkers, if you're comfortable doing so. Interview them about how they view you and what your strengths are. It can help you better understand your brand, make sure that your brand is kind of what you want it to be and that you're promoting it effectively. But asking other people how they view you can be so affirming in so many ways to help boost your confidence, but they might also point out some strengths that you're like discounting and saying, really, that's a strength? Oh, it comes so naturally to me. I didn't, fully realize that. And if you feel a little funky about this, just tell them this career coach in a webinar told you had to do it. Okay, just blame it on me. But this interviewing other people, it could be 3 or 4 people. It doesn't have to be 20, but just asking them, I'm trying to work on my brand a little bit more. How do I come across to you? And what do you see are my top strengths? Can help enormously. You can keep that interview somewhere on your desktop, on your desk at home or whatever, and read it periodically. It can help give you a boost. A second thing we would actually highly recommend is affirmations. Short and sweet, punchy sentences that help you feel more confident, and even better, that help address those gremlins that we were talking about earlier. Write down the opposite of what those gremlins are saying. Now, the thing with affirmations is, number one, you need to see them on a regular basis. So we suggest posting them on your bathroom mirror, on your fridge at home, on your desk at work, whatever's comfortable for you. And you need to keep them short and sweet and actually believe them or buy into them to a certain extent. So you can't just be saying to yourself, well, I am an expert at this, when you really don't feel like that. Say something else like, I have all of these accomplishments that relate to this. So I am confident in myself as a result. Okay. So there's gotta be at least enough kind of buy-in or belief for an affirmation to work, not just putting a Band-Aid over the problem, but keep it short and sweet so that it inspires you as well. Studies have shown, and I know this may sound kind of odd, but if you say your affirmations in the mirror and you're looking at yourself in the eye, studies show that it's more effective because it's something like it's going deeper into your subconscious there and kind of retraining your brain. A third thing that we would recommend is to write down all of your accomplishments, even since childhood. That can help people be more confident. And if it would feel better for you to very specifically write down your professional accomplishments, and that would help your confidence more, totally fine to do so. But we have clients do this, and it does give them a boost. It's pretty cool. A fourth thing that we would like to suggest that not everybody thinks of is, in order to boost your confidence, taking small risks every day, trying something new, putting yourself out there. We don't want you to go get fired, so it needs to be a small risk, a reasonable one. Doing something like that every day can help boost your confidence and push aside the imposter syndrome. Confidence is a muscle. You have to work it out. Like, you have to go to the gym and work it out to keep it strong. And if you're staying the same, doing kind of the same thing all day, every day, your confidence inevitably can start to wear down a little bit. So push yourself. For example, if you're more introverted and you tend to not speak up in meetings, push yourself to speak up in your next meeting. Keep track of, hey, I want to speak up at least twice. Taking some kind of small risk, taking a new class, trying something new, volunteering for a different project within your team or whatever it is, that can help boost your confidence because it can give you things to point to that you tried, took a risk, and it was successful. Two other things. We already talked about the props email folder. So what we'll do with some clients is they'll either have an email folder where they keep all of those emails where people gave them kudos. Some people will keep an accomplishments document where they're keeping track of their accomplishments, but maybe they even write down every day, like, these are the 2 or 3 things that I accomplished today. And that helps them build up their confidence over time and just frankly push aside that negative thinking and the imposter syndrome more. And there was this TED talk recently that I saw, and it's something I can share with people via email if you'd like it, about how our body posture, not just, or body language too, not just influences our brand kind of externally and how we come across, but it influences how we feel. And I'll tell you this, when we've had coaching clients, even just on a simple coaching call, we'll tell them right then and there, if they're not feeling confident in that moment, get into a body posture for you that makes you feel more confident. And everyone has one. Some people will stand up. Some people will just sit up straighter, with their shoulders back, etc. And every single person, I promise you, when we tell them literally to do that right then, they say they feel more confident. Now, is it perfect? No, absolutely not. But it's a step towards this physical body movement, and your body language can not just exude or not exude confidence, but it makes you feel confident or not. So sit up straighter in meetings, stand up when you're talking with someone on the phone that makes you a little bit more nervous. Do different things to improve your confidence, and think about for yourselves, I would say, like, what's my confident body posture or pose, if you will. Oh, and sorry, I'm going to leave this up, but I wanted to say one quick thing to tell the end of the story with the client, Beth, to just kind of close the loop there. We used these things with Beth, and there were certain things for her that worked better than others. So I encourage you to try all of these things that we just talked about. Pick and choose what feels right for you, like 1 or 2 things, and try all of them over time, and know that 1 or 2 of them is going to resonate more with you than others. And that's normal. But with client Beth, we worked with her, and about 6 or 8 months after we had started coaching with her, because she was able to overcome her imposter syndrome, put herself out there, etc. We worked on our resume, LinkedIn, all that stuff too, of course. She got a huge promotion, a big job. She lived in Atlanta at the time we worked with her. Huge promotion up in Chicago. And it was such a big deal for her, like a raise, promotion, etc., that her whole family, she moved her whole family up there for that new job. And what I want you to get and understand is that in that time that we worked with her, it's not like she suddenly got some new certification or, did something crazy and different. For her, it was about how she was coming across and what she was doing internally to make that happen. So getting into the right mindset is, again, why we're here, why this is so important. All right, let's take a look at our next slide. And we find that another tool that can be really, really helpful to help you with imposter syndrome is to leverage a mentor, a coach, a friend, or family member. Have someone help you out with this in the first month so that they're helping hold you accountable to the action steps that you say you're taking. When you're having a bad day and you're not feeling so good, maybe that person can give you a boost, remind you of what your strengths are and why you know what you're doing. So having someone external to help you with these things, whether it's giving you feedback, whether it's helping you brainstorm alternative career ideas, not career ideas, but alternative ideas to manage this, can be incredibly helpful. So if you don't have a mentor now, and please know, a lot of people don't. When we talk with our clients about this and when we give webinars like this, most people in the room don't, and that's okay. It's something that can take a little while to find someone and get someone who can help you out a little bit. It could be a former boss. It could be a former coworker. It could be someone that you've networked with and found through the Michigan Alumni Association. It could be someone within your organization. Some companies or organizations actually have mentoring programs. But if you can find someone that is willing to just talk with you once a month over the phone and have lunch once a quarter, it doesn't have to be all the time, but if you can set up regular meetings with them in some way, shape, or form, and ask them for advice about how to handle this. Be open to their feedback on what you need to do to help manage the imposter syndrome a little bit more, and also give you a little bit of a boost. This can be incredibly helpful because it's someone outside of you looking in saying, look, you've got this, you can figure it out. And what's nice about it too, is if it's someone that is, doesn't have to give you kudos like your boss or whatever, that can help boost your confidence as well, because you're not discounting it as much too. One of the other things we would suggest, actually, there's two more things on these next two slides that can help you manage around imposter syndrome, is to get really clear on what your leadership skills are. And we are not talking just to people here that are managers, people who manage other people. This is about leadership in your career, just in general, and in your job. One of the things that can help you with imposter syndrome is to do the self-assessment and maybe even ask other people to assess you on how are you doing in each of these areas. This is from Development Dimensions International. This is their leadership wheel and some of the top leadership skills they feel are important in today's economy, market, et cetera, and workforce. And if you can rank yourself and say, look, I've got these 2 or 3 really great strengths, and sure, there might be some things I need to work on, but I need to play to my strengths more. The more you steer your career in the direction of your strengths and your job in the direction of your strengths, and you're leveraging them more and more, the more confident you will be and the less sense of imposter syndrome you will have over time. And another way to be clear about and focus on your strengths is this sign model. This is from the Gallup organization. This is the organization that owns the StrengthsFinder assessment. That can also be something that can help you with imposter syndrome, because not just understanding what our strengths are, which is the main thing that the StrengthsFinder assessment obviously will show you, but having language and words to articulate what those strengths are can help boost your confidence a lot and have you be able to understand how you can kind of toot your own horn, so to speak, but do it in the right way. This sign model is one way to help you recognize and leverage your strengths. Also, by the way, strengths of your team and the people that you manage. When you feel effective and you're successful, that's obviously a clue that you're leveraging one of your strengths. So you want to pay attention to those times in your career that this has happened for you. When you notice that you look forward to a certain project, task, working with a certain customer or client, you want to think about that for a second and say, why do I look forward to this? And notice what those themes are, because those are things that you want to do more of as much as possible within your job and career. When you feel like you're growing and improving as a professional, that's a clue that you're leveraging a strength. And part of what they say here is when you feel inquisitive and focused, kind of like when you're in the zone, that most likely means you're leveraging a strength, and you want to focus on those times to help you overcome the imposter syndrome too. And once you're finished with something, or as you're, I guess, even working through it a little bit too, if you feel really fulfilled and authentic, like you get to be who you are, certain project or tasks, etc., and the same with your team, that's a sign as well that you're leveraging one of your strengths. Okay. And one of the other tools, and so we've got a couple more slides here, and then we're going to start to move to Q&A here in just a few minutes. One of the other tools that we like to use with our clients and recommend is to get really clear on what your brand is in order to overcome the imposter syndrome a little bit more. I'm not trying to say that people who don't know their brand are always suffering from imposter syndrome. That's not the case. But sometimes if you can get a little bit clearer about what your values are as a professional, what your strengths are as a professional, and how your education and experience, and lean on those things. These are the things we want you to be thinking about, as well as your personality type. This is the career model we use with our clients to help them define their career goals in the long run and make sure that they're in the right career fit. But they can also help you understand your brand by using these different pieces here, so that you are really clear on what you bring to the table. Again, pushing aside that imposter syndrome and understanding that your unique set of strengths, your personality type, your education and experience, they're different from anybody else's because it's unique to you with all of these different components. And to understand that is part of your value proposition, and really being kind of grounded in that, again, can help you overcome this. All right, two other quick things. We've already talked about an accomplishments document. I referenced this earlier. What I want you to do, if you decide you want to pick up on this one and keep an accomplishments document either on your desk or on your desktop where it's easy to access, these are the things that we want you to put on there. It could be the testimonials and kudos, but it also could be like, hey, this was a success. I did really well with this project or whatever. And I don't want to forget about it because I want to be able to add it to my resume just in case later on. But B, I want to reference this so that I maintain that confidence and I can help push aside those negative thoughts. Okay. Common issues or concerns. I wanted to just address these briefly because these are things that we find our clients will bring up with us a lot. And I just wanted to talk about this for a moment. If you are concerned about, and I'm going to jump around here a little bit, so bear with me here, a career break, you've been laid off, or you're looking at and have gotten into a new role. What I would say with these things is think about and focus on your transferable skills. What are the things that you have done in the past before your break, before the layoff? And when you're looking at this new role that could be and are relevant to what you're going for next, even if you weren't in the same exact industry or the same exact field, what is relatable and transferable? Really big deal there. And if you have been laid off, I just want you to work really hard on your confidence there, because it can be a blow to people's confidence, even when I want you to remind you that it wasn't personal. It's usually the layoff is about they had to cut that department and it's about, finances or whatever. But these are the things I want you to think about there. We talked already about the confidence versus arrogance. If there's more questions there, we can do that in the Q&A. And if you're concerned about someone talking to you and having unconscious bias there, that can lead to imposter syndrome, a couple of things I want you to do there are ask for clarification about what they're saying to kind of dig into what's going on a little bit more there. And that may help them kind of restate what they're asking or what they're saying to you. Another way you can deal with kind of touchier conversations related to you feeling imposter syndrome or someone that may be exhibiting unconscious bias with you is to ask permission to talk with them in a deeper way about what's going on, simply by saying, could I talk with you about something that may be a little bit touchy or is a little bit difficult for me to share, but I think it's important to do so. So these are some of the things that you can work on to help with those items. And finally, let's go ahead and please everyone After this slide, we're going to do the Q&A. Please start to enter your questions in the Q&A box. We want you to create a plan. And what I would say is come up with or identify 2 things that you've heard today that resonate the most with you. There are some examples here, but pick 2 things to start out with, because I know we've shared a lot and it can be overwhelming. Pick the journaling, for example, or it may be like some affirmations. It may be that you need to have a tough conversation with someone to talk a little bit more about what's going on for you, or ask for support from your boss. But pick 2 things, write those down, and get a copy of the slides if you like them. We already said that earlier, but try these other ones over time, because you may need to play with your options a little bit to see what has the biggest impact for you. I'm going to be quiet now. I said a lot, and I'm happy to go to answering questions. I didn't put the Q&A here, and I meant to do that. I apologize. That's where we are. We're on Q&A. So Haley, can you manage yeah, thanks. I see you.
Yes, thank you so much again, Haley. So we are going to jump right into our Q&A. And again, we received a number of questions. So we might not get to all of them, but really excited to dig in here. Brooke and I are going to tag team this. So Haley, our first question, what goals can someone set to overcome feeling like an imposter?
I would very first, identify what's going on and why you're feeling that way. And if it's the situational things like we said. So you can't really fix something if you don't know what's broken, so to speak. So starting there and like saying, okay, when do I feel like this and where is it coming from would be the very first step. Then you can start to use the action steps we talked about today.
Okay, great. And this leads into, Brooke, do you want to take the next question? Okay, this kind of leads into, we have another question about, I know you mentioned self-awareness as a tool for overcoming imposter syndrome, but we have a question, it says, I find those who have greater awareness seem to experience imposter syndrome more. How do you balance self-awareness and confidence here? And I know you just touched on that, thought we could dive a little deeper into that subject.
That is a fantastic question. I've never had anyone ask that. I love that. So the self-awareness, and it's almost like that goes hand in hand with like intuition and being empathetic in some ways, is so good in a lot of ways, right? But what you need to try, or what you can try to learn to do, is realize when you're going a little bit too far with it, and maybe you're taking on either the situation too much or the other person's emotions a little bit too much. Imagine there's a little bit of a barrier there between, using that empathy and saying, okay, this is where it needs to stop, because now it's impacting me a little bit too much. So for example, if someone gives you some not so great feedback, saying, let me be objective about this. What can I do about this problem? What part of their feedback is true and accurate and I get it? And what part is just making me feel bad and maybe is not as accurate? So trying to be a little bit more objective about it can help you with that. Hopefully that's a start.
Thanks, Hallie. So I know earlier you were talking a little bit about the gremlins, the internal negative self-talk that goes on. We did get a question that's more about, what if that internal self-talk is actual self-talk, actual talk coming from someone else? So Daniel asked, what do you do if other people are making you feel like an imposter?
That's a great question. So number one, I would worry about that work environment that you're in, and if it's getting to be a little bit toxic and not positive. So if that's happening, I would just, ask yourself, okay, like can I have a conversation with these people directly, depending on my relationship with them and how they might take it? And if I can, to let them know that I need a little bit more support and kudos from them, that would be great. If that can't work for the situation, is it something you can talk with your boss or even maybe HR about? And again, not to be complainy, but to say, like, if nothing else, can I ask them for a little bit more, can you give me some feedback when I did something right, and some, more specific support, advice, etc. So if there's something that you can do there to ask for what you want to help outweigh the other stuff, that would be great. And even better, if you could have a conversation with some of these people about, for example, when you say this, it, kind of makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Is that what you're intending? Can we adjust that a little bit? It'd be fantastic if you could have a direct conversation. Great
Yeah, I
question.
think that's great. And it really is about having those difficult conversations and just really, really having them, digging really
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
So
And you
then
can
another,
have them in the right way.
yeah, another question we got is about, I guess if you're voluntold at work, when you're given an assignment that you don't really like to do, but you're great at it. So how do you get past when your accomplishments are things that you never want to do again because you're constantly assigned work that does not highlight your real strengths?
Yep. Totally understand that. We've had a lot of people say that to us. See if there's a way that you can start to steer your job and your career away from those things. And I realize there's not a magic wand here. You can't do it overnight. But if you can start to think about, okay, are there other strengths that I can start to play up in my current job to start to move in that direction? Could I talk with my boss or supervisor or my team about, can we find ways to start to leverage these other strengths a little bit more, so you can start to minimize those things and realize that, again, it's not going to happen overnight, but think about it as like a ship that you're turning to start to identify other things, volunteer your time for those other things, focus more of your time on there, see if you can adjust your job description, when you have your next performance evaluation, whatever it is, to help steer your career in a new direction. You've got to be proactive about it. No one else is going to do it for you. So come up with some action steps so you can take to kind of move in that different direction and get rid of those things.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's again, that self-awareness, like recognizing your strengths and your where you lead and your skills. Okay, we have a few questions that are related to the data. So I know I've been doing some reading that suggests that females experience imposter syndrome more than males. So our next question is exactly about this. So is there data to show if imposter syndrome is more prevalent with females versus males? I asked because job interviewing, negotiating benefits, asking for raises were not part of my predominantly female career and educational training.
Yep. There is, and we find within our population of our clients that more often than not, the women experience more of it. I mean, I think, and this is just kind of funny, we've had some men, and not that many, be like, no, I don't have any gremlins at all. Like and also men will tend to just look at a job description versus a woman and be like, well, I don't have that, but I'll figure it out. So it is more prevalent with women, I think, for a lot of different reasons. And we can point out, societal reasons, all these other things. So it's about saying, okay, what are the things that I'm not doing that I see my male counterparts doing, for example, and how can I work on those strengths and skills and get better at them? Because it is something as a female that I do think we struggle with a little bit more, because we're more taught to be humble, not speak up as much, not cause conflict, etc. So we have to work on it just a little bit more, but it is absolutely doable. And the other thing, and sorry, I'll just say one other quick thing, that there's the stigma too, that we worry about, well, are we going to come across as being aggressive or too assertive when, we're supposed to be a woman and what's our place and all of that kind of difficult stuff. Find a way that it works for you to feel more confident and be assertive, and worry a little bit less about that stigma and say, okay, well, what makes sense for me where I'm balancing this in the right way? I'm still being humble and giving my team credit, but I'm taking ownership of my accomplishments as well.
Okay, great. And I know we are basically at time. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. So final question we have, how can this is a question we got from registration. How can I also support my staff who may experience imposter syndrome?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I would try to pay attention to the themes with them. When you notice they're experiencing it more so than others, and I would invite them to have a conversation about it and say, how are you feeling about XYZ? I would also make an effort to give them more kudos. And when you're giving them kudos, don't just say, oh, you're doing great, something vague in general. Be specific about it, because when you give someone kudos that are really specific about, you did really well in this way with this project, this is what I saw, that helps with imposter syndrome much more than just a generic, blanket thing. Hey, nice job.
Great. Well, thank you again. Please join me in extending a genuine thank you to Hallie for being with us today. Please also feel free to check out Hallie's website. That's createyourcareerpath.com to learn more. Stay in touch with our speaker. Like Hallie said, if you'd like to get additional career advice, she and her team after the webinar, email admin@createyourcareerpath.com to set up a free consult. Hallie, thank you again for your time, your expertise, and for giving back to the University of Michigan community. We are so grateful. And we just like to remind our alumni that a recording of today's session, as well as the resources shared in the chat, will be sent as a follow-up. And don't forget to explore our website, alumni.umich.edu/career, and complete the survey that my colleague Brooke is dropping in the chat. So thanks again, everyone, for joining, and go Blue.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.